Hey y'all, it's Care. Today I'm going to be talking about all of my favorite books from 2020. Basically just all of the books that I've been gushing about this year, just put in list form from number 10 to number 1. First of all, I want to throw out some honorable mentions just because I could not narrow it down to just 10 books. I didn't want to rank these. I'm not going to talk specifically about my thoughts of these first few or even like what they're about, but I did want to mention them in this end of the year favorites video just because I wanted to show them a little bit of love before the new year rolls around. You know what, the sweater was cute for a second, but it is so hot in Georgia. I was trying to make it look wintry and festive, but I just can't do it. I can't do it to myself. Okay, so first I want to talk about Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is probably the best book that I read this year. This book just really felt too important for me to rank. If you're interested in knowing more about Chanel Miller's story, heavy trigger warnings for sexual assault, and just please check out the trigger warnings. I have the database linked in the description, but this book is really a lot to get through. It is a very painful story, but it is so beautifully written, and as I was reading, I felt like I was there with Chanel, which was really hard, really heartbreaking most of the book, but also in telling her own story, I really have a sense of who this woman is, and she is just so strong, so inspiring. Just the power that this woman holds. Look at her. She's amazing. Yeah. This is the best book that I read this year, so just know that going forward. I'm not putting it on the list, but I wanted to highlight it right off the bat in this video. Now going straight into all of my honorable mentions, I have Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and Take a Hint, Danny Brown, both by Talia Hibbert. I loved both of these books. As you're gonna see, I put a lot of little romantic comedies on this top 10 list, so I just read such a high quantity of books like this year that these two didn't quite make my top 10, but I thoroughly enjoyed them. I also want to talk about This Is Where I Leave You by Jonathan Tropper. Absolutely love this book. This is one of the funniest books I've ever read. We have a funeral, but what is so funny is like all of the stupid family drama, people returning to their hometowns, getting back into like hometown drama and people that they used to know in high school, but now they're adults, but they're reverting back to their old selves. Like, this is hilarious. I love it. One that's not so funny, Kill Creek by Scott Thomas. It's about the authors who are involved in that PR stunt to go stay in a haunted house overnight, and then they get there, they're like, there's no way this place is haunted. I don't know, it might have been. You have to read it and find out. I really loved this book this year. And the last honorable mention that I actually just pulled, I switched this book out for another book last second, but it's The Stranger Diaries by Ellie Griffiths. This felt like a very fun, classic mystery, just a little whodunit. We had a book within a book. It feels a little dark academia, but it was just a very wholesome mystery. It's actually going to be a detective series, which I didn't know. That I thought it was a standalone when I read it, because I think that it came out this year in 2020, but it was so much fun, and I just don't really see that many people talking about it. I wanted to hype it up here, but I don't think it was quite good enough to make it onto my official top 10 list. Okay, now, without further ado, let's talk about the top 10, starting with number 10 herself. The Good Daughter by Karen Slaughter. So this book obviously is pretty thick. My copy here is almost 500 pages, and a lot of this book is a legal thriller. One of the sisters in this book is a lawyer, so we also are following a court case that's really intense the entire book. So if you're not into that, this might not be your thing. If you've read Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter and enjoyed it, I still recommend you try The Good Daughter, but just keep in mind that the plot is not going to have that same pacing. I thought this was incredibly page-turning. We start the book out with one of the most graphic, intense scenes that I've ever read about. The first little sentence on this inside flap really covers it. It says, 2 girls are forced into the woods at gunpoint. One runs for her life. One is left behind. So it is just such an intense read. This is another one you're gonna really have to check out the trigger warnings if you're sensitive to just about anything, because Karen Slaughter has a way of writing so descriptively. No matter how high your tolerance is for gore and for violence, Karen Slaughter has a way of getting under your skin. So this is my number 10 book of the year. I can't believe we're actually getting into this list. Number 9 is I Let You Go by Claire McIntosh. I would definitely classify this book under psychological suspense, probably somewhere between psychological suspense, psychological thriller. It is a slow-paced book, but I think that the payoff is amazing. There is this massive twist in the middle that shook me up so bad that I read it, I read the twist, I set the book down, I started shaking. I had to reread the last few sentences. My mind could not compute what I had just read, and I just had to get up and go take a shower. Like, I had to cleanse myself because I couldn't believe what I just read. I don't think I'm overhyping it, but also if I am, I'm sorry, but I want to tell you how excited I was to find a book that blew my mind. And then the second half of the book took a turn that I just didn't see coming. And it wasn't like the twists from there on out were anything like that midway twist for me, but at the same time, I just loved how fast we flipped that switch of just what is happening here. At the very beginning of the book, a young boy is killed in a car accident, and from there we're following different characters in this story. That's literally all I can say about it because I don't want to spoil a single little bitty bit for you. I want you to go read it for yourselves if you like thrillers. Number 8 on this list is The One by John Mars. I think this is the most recent book that I have read. At the time that I compiled this list, I had to throw it on here. This is an incredibly fast-paced thriller. It's almost like a little bit of a sci-fi thriller. Like, I don't think it's like it's kind of techie. I don't know if that means science fiction, but it's like a techie thriller. We're following these 5 different perspectives and how each of their respective lives is really affected by this dating match app where you are genetically and biologically matched to your soulmate if you sign up for it. And this thing is ruining marriages. It is making people question everything about their identity, what they think that they want in a partner. And it is just a wild ride. We have a serial killer POV. I read a lot of thrillers, but I've read a lot of domestic thrillers recently and like psychological suspense books, like a whodunit. But I have not read something about a serial killer and like how intense that can be in a long time. And I was not expecting it going in. You find out in like chapter 2. It's not a spoiler. Oh, speaking of chapters, this book, every chapter is like 3 pages max, maybe like a 5-page max. I don't want to mislead anybody, but these chapters, I flew through it. I read it on my phone. That's why I don't have a copy of it. I read this book in like 2 days. I could not put it down. I was so obsessed with it, and I just can't wait to read more from John Mars in the future. I hope he's a new favorite author for me. Last thing I'm going to say about it, I know everyone else says this too, but if you like the show Black Mirror, this felt like it could have been a very, very strong standalone episode of Black Mirror. It was just so good. Number 7 on the list is Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. I'm gonna put a link to one of my recent reading vlogs in the description of the video, maybe in the cards, because the night that I finished this book, I think that all the thoughts I had at that time are more interesting to listen to than anything I could possibly say about it right now. Yes, this book is funny, satirical, it's uplifting, it's everything everyone's been saying that it is, but it also is very sad. It definitely touched my heart in ways that I wasn't expecting for it to. It's about a bank robber who is not very good at being a bank robber and accidentally holds a room full of people hostage who are all viewing this empty apartment that's for sale. Now, I hate reading about hostage situations. They make me really upset. They make me nervous. I don't watch them on TV. I don't, if there's ever a true crime podcast about a hostage situation, I will skip that one. It really upsets me. But the hostage situation in this book is not intense, okay? So when I say this book is sad or intense at times, it's not ever because of the hostage situation. I want to make that very clear. It's really a character study. It's really heartwarming, and I really enjoy Frederick Bachman's writing. We're definitely gonna see him again later on in this video. Number 6, we have a crowd pleaser if I've ever seen one. The Hayden Game by Sally Thorne. This is a precious book. It brought me so much joy. This was the very first book that I read when I moved into my apartment in March, like when all of the lockdown stuff was first happening. We didn't really know what was going on. We didn't know if it was gonna be like a temporary thing or a pretty permanent thing. I was just trying to vibe out on my couch, my little mini brown couch that I had at that time, and I would just read this book every night trying to relax, and it was the perfect thing to read at that point in my life. This is a workplace rom-com. It's enemies to lovers. They work at a publishing company, which had been my dream for so long. I was just living for this office. I was living for the tension. The banter was so good. Each of these characters worked for different publishing companies, and then when the publishing companies merged together, these two were suddenly thrown into each other's lives. So they have pretty similar roles in their company, but a promotion opportunity arises and they are both competing for the same promotion. You probably can't guess everywhere that this book is going, but you kind of see the direction it's heading in. But I loved it so much. I really loved every page. If you're just looking for a book that's gonna cheer you up and you like a rom-com, then please pick this one up if you haven't already. Okay, we've made it to the top 5. Number 5 is The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. I am so in love with Alaskan settings. This book is all about Calla. Calla's in her mid-20s. She's still living at home with her mom and her stepdad in Canada. She loses her job because of some layoffs. She does have this little like Instagram influencer side hustle she has going on, but it's not enough to make a living on. And so while she's in between jobs, she gets news that her estranged father, who lives in Alaska, is sick. She's never really spent time with him, and they basically tell her, if you want to get to know this man, you need to come now. So her dad runs this Alaskan charter plane company, so when she gets to Alaska, she meets one of her dad's pilots named Jonah, and he is grumpy. He's rude. They just don't hit it off. They're not each other's cup of tea. And as she spends time there, there's a lot in this book that is not romance. Like, a lot of it is family drama. A lot of it feels very much like a snowy Hallmark movie. Even though this book takes place in the summer, it was really fun to read in the winter time because it felt Christmassy because of the snow. Anyway, I digress. The only bone that I have to pick with this book is that Jonah does this really annoying thing where he constantly tells Calla that like she doesn't need all of her makeup, and I'm willing to overlook it because Jonah lives in Alaska. I don't know. That's the only argument I have for him. He lives in Alaska and I like him. But if the book didn't have that, it got a little bit repetitive. I don't want to turn anyone away from reading it because like it didn't bother me, but I already know people like are gonna have that problem with the book of like, I can wear makeup if I want to wear makeup, because that's very much how I am. I hate it when people tell me either that like I look better with my makeup or I look better without my makeup. Like, just don't tell any, just keep it to yourself. I can't stand that. Anyway, that happens in the book. You've been warned. Everything else I could possibly ever say about it is just completely glowing. Yeah, I can't wait to continue with the series next year. This next one is so exciting for me. Number 4 is Battle Royale by Kushin Takami. I did not think that I was gonna finish this book before 2020 was over. I started it, I think back in May. It was either in April or May, and was so obsessed with it. I already knew the story just because I love the movie so much. This book is about a dystopian Japan where a bunch of junior high students are all taken unwillingly to an island and have to battle each other to the death. There can only be one survivor, and there are just no plot holes that I could find in this book. This is one of the best books I have ever read. I'm so obsessed with it. It was so fast-paced. It was actually really scary, really violent. Like, oh my gosh, look at the cover. I don't even know if I should be holding this cover up. I might replace it with a different one that's a little more palatable for everyone who does not like a bunch of violence and guts and gore. This book has it though. It has some of the most memorable characters I've ever read. These students are supposed to be junior high age, which I guess it's like Japanese junior high. I think they're supposed to be about 15 years old, maybe a little bit older. We see that come up in shallow relationships, but we also see it come out in these really strong friendships. I have chills just talking about it. I cried multiple times reading this book. Just don't get attached to anybody in the book at any time, because the whole point of the book is that there's supposedly gonna be only one person standing at the end of all of this. So yeah, it's intense. Okay, so we've made it to the top 3 of the video, and I have to be so completely honest here. These top 3 have flipped back and forth on me in the past few days. I've wanted to film this video for a while now because I feel really confident that I'm not gonna read any more books in 2020 that would have cracked this top 10, but I just could not decide the order to put these last 3 books in because they all are so special to me in 100% completely different ways. So I feel good about the order I have them in now, but please know they're really interchangeable. These 3 books are the best that I've read this year. These hands down are the top 3. Okay, let's do it. Number 3 is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. This book is about 2 black sisters, and they go their separate ways when they're teenagers, and they go on to live very different lives, and then much later in their adulthood, their children meet down the road. I cannot wait to see what Britt Bennett does next. Her writing style reminds me very much of Celeste Ng. It is just very beautiful and very powerful, and she has a way of connecting you to characters that feels so real. Her writing is just so clear, and it is elevated. It is top-notch writing without ever feeling pretentious to me, and there's also so much representation in this book. This book really touches on colorism and racism in communities but also within families, and it was really powerful. This was one of those books that while I was reading it, even from the first few pages, I just knew it was going to be a new favorite of all time for me. So if you've not tried The Vanishing Half yet, it is historical fiction. I think it won the Goodreads Choice Award for historical fiction this year actually, but if you're interested in reading it, I really highly recommend it. This is a phenomenal book. I'm having an existential crisis. I just switched my 1 and 2. Okay, I think this is right. Okay, my number 2 book of the year. It's Beach Read by Emily Henry, but when I tell you, this is probably my favorite book that I read this year. I had the most fun and I enjoyed this book the most this year, okay? A lot of people really don't like this book. I really loved this book. It really worked exactly for me. Yes, the tone is all over the place, but again, it was exactly what I wanted it to be. This book is about January, and a lot has gone wrong in January's life here recently. She's a romance author. Her father has recently passed away, and also she is just recently broken up with her boyfriend. She doesn't have a place to live right now. So she goes to this little beach town and stays in this beach house that her father has left to her in his will. And when she gets there, she finds out all of this family drama that she doesn't even begin to know how to process. And while all that is going on, she realizes that her neighbor is this guy named Gus, who I'm just so in love with. We will get to Gus later. But he is also an author and he writes literary fiction. They're both in writing slumps. Gus has his own problems going on, but they're both in their writing slumps. They decide that they're gonna try to switch genres. So January is gonna try writing like weird literary fiction and Gus is gonna try writing a rom-com. So they begin to take these field trips with each other, which they're basically just dates, but the field trips are so funny. So like, for instance, January will take Gus to a fair so that he can get in the mindset of writing a rom-com, and then Gus will be like, let's go interview these people from a cult. So when people say the tone is all over the place, it gets really sad and really intense, and a lot of people think it's unnecessary, but I'm always down for a cult subplot, so I loved it. And I really did love January. I felt really connected to January. I love reading about writers. It's so fascinating to me. But Gus's back is killing him from carrying this novel on his back. If I'm gonna be in love with a boy in a book, he has to have crazy unresolved emotional trauma and baggage that he doesn't know what to do with, and Gus has it all. Let me tell you, he's moody and he's a writer. He's got crazy stuff going on in his past, he's got crazy stuff going on in his present, and he just ends up laying it all out on the line. It was so good. I love this book. So this isn't just one of the fun, fluffy romances I've been reading. Like, it's got that in here, but it also has really good conversations about life and death and grief and how to forgive someone after they've already passed away when you can't talk through something with them. I think that the larger conversations in this book were really impactful for me. But also Gus was everything. So Beach Read is number 2. It's kind of number 1, but it's number 2. Okay, I feel good. I feel confident. You already know what it's gonna be. But my number 1 book that I read in 2020 is the very first book that I read in January of this year. And it's Beartown by Frederick Bachman. I don't know what to say about it. There's nothing I can say about this book that I've not already said in one of my many videos this year. But if somehow you missed it, this book is all about this boys' junior league hockey team and how everything in this small Swedish town revolves around the hockey team. Even though they're just kids, the hockey team is really talented and they continue to progress throughout their hockey season. I always think I understand sports until I go to talk about this book and realize I don't know anything about hockey. But if this team wins their season, then they're gonna get this huge training facility to come to Beartown, and this would be life-changing for the people of the town because it would really stimulate their economy. So they have a lot riding on this team that isn't like, yes, they love the boys, yes, they are pulling for them, and they're just some like hardcore crazy hockey fans in the town, but also the team is acting kind of as a puppet master for the economy and like these different political issues going on in the town and like moral issues, because the hockey team is caught up in this horrible scandal and crime in the middle of the book. And then from there, the different characters we're following in the book split off and are divided in, do we support this team because we really need this for our economy? Or should they be held accountable for their actions, even though that means putting it into the season or pulling certain players from the team that they might need? What do we need to do with all of this information? It's such a good book. It's a contemporary literary fiction book. and I'm just never going to forget this story. I still haven't read the sequel yet. I kind of want to make it my very first read of 2021, since this was my first read of 2020. I think that'd be so cute. Beartown just had so much to say about being on a sports team, being a good friend, being a leader, people coming together despite coming from different backgrounds. Also, we have a lot of discussion on sexual assault, on victim blaming, on taking sides and just showing up for people and doing what's right. Yeah. This one's it. This is my number one of 2020. This has really stressed me out because I've read about 115 books so far this year, and I read a lot of really good books. So those were my top 10 with a few honorable mentions sprinkled in. And you already know, I would absolutely love to know what was your number one book of 2020. If you want to go ahead and drop that in the comments, I can't wait to talk about them with you all. I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching me. It has been such a fun year on this channel. I don't know why I'm phrasing it like that. I'm gonna put out a few more videos by the end of the year, but I just really want to thank everyone for being so nice to me in this really tough year. I've made some wonderful friends, and I'm so thankful for you guys, and you really make my day. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.